Okay, guys, we're gonna try to do this again. Let's see. Okay, sir, can you hear me now?
Just barely hear you.
Oh, okay. It's just yeah, it's maybe I can turn my volume up all the way. I wonder if that makes a difference. Okay. Now my volume is at 100%.
No, when you hear me,
I can. It sounds like you're really far away.
yeah, that's the way you are with me. I'm sure it's an
Okay.
issue on mine. Yeah,
Okay. Well, I guess we can just go with this. I'm okay. I'm fine with that. So, um,
you know
I'm-
when the video first popped up, I had a little icon for video and audio, and now the audio icon has dropped off.
oh, yeah, I'm looking at my screen. I see your camera and I see the microphone. Um, Not sure, but I've got the volume at 100, so but it's still good as long as you can hear me.
Uh,
Oh, now I can't. Oh,
no, I just went to my dial on my external dial on my speaker. Turn it on. See if that-
this part is probably okay. I would say this is probably good. But anyway, as long as you can hear me, I just wanted to thank you for doing an interview with us. You're very well known and well respected in the immigration community, U.S. immigration community. So your opinion on a lot of these things is really critical, I think, to a lot of people regarding the success of these waivers and educating the public in general on this stuff. So once again, I want to thank you for coming on board.
Yeah, how about if I just do some uh, written responses to that those questions, and they'll be brief and send them back to you.
Um,
I, I think we've kind of covered. I think we kind of covered most of the issues in our pre-conference discussion.
okay. Well, you could. I can just read. When you do that, I can just read your replies in Zoom. Um, these questions are just basically just these are just basic type questions, just small stuff.
Still don't see anything where I can make an adjustment for the audio.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, I hear you pretty fine over here. I don't know if you can hear me. How do I sound okay coming in? Or maybe I just call you on the phone, put you on the speaker. Yes, definitely something about the system. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, it looks like you muted yourself. It looks like you're muted. Oh, there we go. Now you're unmuted.
Press that mute button to see if there's an adjustment I can.
Now,
I
now,
see
yeah, now you sound pretty clear.
I'm coming in clear to you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, and now I still can't hear you.
Oh. I mean, I can raise my voice, but you hear me now, can't you?
like you said, it sounds like you're a long ways away. I can just barely hear. And on the portion of my computer for audio, I have the volume turned way up. Highest.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, do you mind if I just ask you this stuff and you, like I said, you're loud and clear to us now.
I couldn't quite hear that.
Oh, I said you're loud and clear to us now. If if you mind if I just ask you a few of these questions. Yeah, I don't know what's up with the signal here. Hmm. Can you hear me now?
Still can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Uh,
Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it.
oh,
I'm on a screen.
do I sound different now or
I'm going to try unsuppressing Zoom background noise.
oh, okay.
Browser filter.
Now we can hear static now.
My computer screen shows that my microphone is functioning, but the speaker.
We can hear you pretty much okay now.
Okay, but I still have it.
Oh,
Um,
hmm. Oh, that's perfect.
well,
I
you
think
know what?
that was perfect. How do
Yep.
I sound?
I have to use my microphone, or I have to use earphones.
Oh, okay, but you hear me now, eh?
Perfectly.
Oh,
Yes.
perfect. Okay.
Well, I think it's an operator error issue
Yeah.
at this end.
No, no, sir. It's a computer error, not yours. So,
Oh, yeah. If you, I'll take that. Thanks.
okay. Well, like I was saying earlier, everyone, it's an honor having you here and a privilege, my esteemed honor.
Oh,
And because you are well respected in the U.S. immigration community, I mean, you're the former ARO director, so you ran the show.
well, I started the show.
Oh, okay,
Let's,
even better, yeah.
yeah. What happened is there prior to the Admissibility Review Office,
Yep.
all the old INS, Immigration Naturalization Service, district offices, they all made their own decisions on I-192s, the district offices along the Canadian border. And then the INS overseas districts, and there were three, they received the referrals from the American consular officers who were requesting 212D3A authorization to issue non-immigrant visas. But and all those decisions were made overseas at the various district offices. With DHS and the CBP being part of that structure, CBP decided to centralize that process into one office.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the director of the pilot Admissibility Review Office. So we were doing all the I-192s from on the Canadian border, plus all the referrals from the American consulates overseas, a total of about 15,000 cases a year. And I don't know how much that's changed, but I would suspect it's still in that range. But that's 15,000 individual decisions a year.
Yeah, because I remember, I think it was around '07, they used to adjudicate these waivers at Squeaker-Rest, Montana, and then
Sure.
West Montana lost their authority, and you
Yep.
essentially are the you are the pilot, you're the pioneer, initial director.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So I had a couple of years of experience, and I think the great advantage there, centralizing that process, is you had a dedicated staff, and instead of having officers making those decisions
Hmm.
on kind of a collateral duty basis, and now there's a centralized staff, and over the years now, uh, they've built up great experience and expertise and consistency, I think, in making decisions. So it's really benefited the process.
So I was going to ask you, so from a decision maker's perspective, what do you think separates a credible waiver application from one that's simply hoping for like a favorable outcome?
Well, it, every application is going to get fair considerations, but when you're looking at the I-192 applications uh, submitted from Canadian citizens and residents, most of the time there's a screening process uh,
Okay.
from an organization or an attorney, or even sometimes just from a conversation with the CBP officers at the port of entry. Um, and sometimes the CBP officers will encourage the person to apply, to be an applicant for the, I mean, we call it a waiver, but it's really an authorization to apply for admission to the United States.
Okay.
The,
Okay.
the one thing that's important to remember, is it's an authorization to apply for admission, but the underlying ground of inadmissibility
Mm-hmm.
does not go away.
Mm-hmm.
This approval to travel to the United States is only a temporary approval, and the statute authorizing that approval also requires that conditions must be attached to that approval. Uh, but I think when the applicant is informed by a reputable organization or an immigration attorney specializing in this kind of work, um, the person providing the assistance is is with all of their experience is giving the applicant a better understanding of the likelihood for approval. Uh,
Okay.
and I know with the I-192 applicants, when especially where they're just applying on their own without approval, without assistance, uh, the Admissibility Review Office used to deny 30 to 40% of those
Hmm.
applications. In those applications, it was kind of like, well, here's the process, I'll apply and see what happens, but without a good understanding of the likelihood of approval. Now, your organization has a different uh, expectation or different experience in in the likelihood of approval, but that comes from your experience in working with the process.
I agree. So, like in your experience, how important would you say is honesty and internal consistency when evaluating an overall applicant's credibility? Like the officer at the ARO looking at a waiver application, is he asking himself, this person being honest, is what I'm reading credible, or is this just something they just slapped together?
Well, that's always a judgment, and what the adjudicator does, what the decision maker does, is he looks at the answers and compares that to the applicant's history.
Okay.
Uh, uh, history is history is something that doesn't go away. History is part of the record, and that record, especially in this digital age, that record will be available to the decision maker at the Admissibility Review Office. Not only the history of the applicant's interactions with the CBP officer and the ports of entry, but things like a person's history, like the RCMP history, is is available. In fact, the applicant is required to submit the RCMP history
Hmm.
as part of the application. And so there are other government agency um, records that become available to the ARO decision maker, and so the applicant has to be really, really careful to make sure that what the applicant is putting down as part of the application is honest and straightforward.
That ties into another question. I was just wondering about something. Some of these people are talking about batch processing cycles at the ARO. Like, for example, if a gentleman files for a waiver, I'll say January 2010, and now we're in maybe June 2010. I keep telling people it's not so much a batch processing cycle, it's a matter of it's case by case, where someone can have a conviction for car theft, where someone can have a conviction for child sex crimes. Obviously, the child sex crimes is going to take a lot more time to adjudicate than the person that stole the car. So I tell people, I said, there's really no time frame per se. It's case by case, officer by officer, staffing, etc. Am I right on the money when I say that to people?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty close because even in the example that you listed, you're talking about two crimes that are completely separate. It, they're really uh, they're really different crimes. Car theft is one thing. Okay, so you stole a car. But if you're talking about a pedophile, you're talking about a crime against a person
Yeah.
that has lasting effects on the victim's life. And and the ARO decision maker is going to be really, really careful looking at that in assessing the risk of harm if the applicant is allowed to enter the United States again. Is a person going to steal another car again? History makes history is really important there. A history of good behavior. Not only did you stop stealing cars, but is your other is the rest of your history lie by? Is there a history of, for instance, several alcohol-related offenses? The
Okay.
alcohol-related offenses, in and of themselves, may not make the person admissible, but it 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 can provide um, the decision maker with with um, with a better assessment of the risk of harm if that person is allowed to enter the United States.
Okay. Yeah. So, because some of these places keep telling these people, oh, you applied 12 months ago, you're going to get your decision soon. And I keep telling people, I said, that's not a guarantee. It depends on the officer and it's case by case. So, and I tell people, I say, you got to wait for the officer to make his final decision regarding your file. You can't say, oh, it's been 10 months. Where's my decision? I said, it doesn't work that way. It's up to the officer when he or she is finished with your file and render their decision. Is that
That's true. And the thing to remember there is the decisions are made in the order of chronological filing in the applications being
okay?
chronologically filed. So an application that was filed yesterday is going to receive a decision sooner than an application that's filed today or tomorrow. And in addition to that, besides all the I-192 applications coming in, there's an equal, if not greater number of recommendations that are coming from American consulates overseas, where the consular officers are requesting authorization to issue the non-immigrant visa. And if
Yes.
that authorization is granted, then the consular officer is authorized to issue the non-immigrant visa. And the applicant, the non-immigrant visa applicant, then is authorized to travel to the United, get on a plane, travel to the United States with a valid non-immigrant visa. And then when the person appears at the port of entry, it's not a guarantee of admission, but it allows the applicant to apply for admission and establish the bona fides of the trip.
Yeah. So the ARO, they're adjudicating waivers from Canadians, but also um, when let's say at the U.S. Embassy in Germany, they submit a recommendation for a waiver, the ARO's dealing with that, or the U.S. Embassy in um, Sweden, let's just say, they're dealing with that. So it's not just Canadians; it's also, like you said, recommendations from the consulates for these waivers as well. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and when you're talking about the consular cases, you're probably looking at between 6 and 8 thousand cases a year, and I don't know if
Okay,
that number has gone up. Um, some consulates have very few cases, but a post like London, England, has about 20% of that
yeah.
numerical. So just from one single post. I remember I used to look forward to the communication from London because you'd go to work Monday morning and you'd see the the non-immigrant visa consular chief would have reviewed like 150 uh, individual cases and send them in a batch to us.
Well, we have a location in London. I used to live in Southend-on-Sea in Essex, but
Okay.
we do these B1, B2 visas at the London office, but we find that the Belfast location, they tend to be, I would say, more efficient in that sense, but the London office, um, they're really difficult to deal with at times.
Well, remember this about the London office: their volume is huge. Their volume is huge. So you have the consular officer, then you have an NIV chief, and then you have a
Okay.
chief for consular services. And so, like when you're talking about a 212D3A request for authorization, it has to go through 3 levels of review before it leaves the post and gets to the ARO. And by the way, that's all transmitted electronically.
Yes. Okay, now that makes sense. So, so basically, in your view, there's no guaranteed timeline regarding waiver adjudication. There's no, it's officer, well, it's case dependent. I mean, what
It's case and history dependent.
it's okay, history.
It depends on the nature of the ground of inadmissibility, and all of the record material um, supporting that determination of admissibility, and then ultimately there has to be an assessment of risk of harm to the United States if the applicant is authorized to enter.
Yeah, so me having worked for the US government before, like we discussed earlier, I understand the fact that when a case comes in, the officer gets it, he or she looks at it. Sometimes there are other things they have to do. They have to do other security checks. There's other parts that go along with it, and that stuff all takes time. So when Joe Smith here files for a waiver because he wants to go to the ball game in the US in 8 months, I say there's no guarantee you're going to make that ball game. and Joe doesn't seem to understand that.
Yeah, the process has at least a couple different kinds of security checks
Yep.
that are done, and certainly name checks and also fingerprint checks, and certainly the FBI databases
Oh yeah.
are assessed, and I won't. You having worked for the U.S. government, you understand that there are other agencies that could be involved also. Um, but if there's information that's part of a person's history, certainly the ARO officer making the decision will want to make sure he's aware of that information before a decision is made.
Yeah, because at times, if the person has a U.S. criminal history, let's say in California, they've got crimes for armed robbery, and the ARO sees that in the FBI database when they do their check, they want to know about that as well. So then, oftentimes, they'll write back to us asking us about that, and then we have to get that info to them. But people think,
Yes,
oh,
that's
they
true.
look at a form and say, no, it's many moving parts to this machine. It's not just one form, you're done. It depends, it's case by case. So there's no guaranteed timeline. It depends on the case, the adjudicator, everything. It's they don't seem to get that here in Canada.
Well, no decisions will be made until all of the available databases are checked, and there's an informative response to that query. And then the case gets in line with everything else that's been submitted prior.
So what do you think, like from an adjudicator standpoint, what would signal like long-term stability in an applicant? Like an applicant who has admitted to drug possession in a sworn statement to CBP. What would show long-term stability that he's no longer going to use drugs again?
Well, is there any other history of arrests?
History.
Uh, what uh, Certainly history of arrests, and if there are arrests, um, what what were the offenses? Was it simple possession, um, or was it?
Like maybe
I'd
like drug
say
trafficking. Yeah, maybe they were charged with
I'd
trafficking.
say, I'd say long term a long term trafficker is very unlikely to get an approval, but somebody who got caught um, with a marijuana cigarette in the pocket decades ago is more likely to get an approval. In addition to that, um, there there can be medical evaluations. Um, does the person still test positive for unlawful drugs in the person's system? And now I think the ARO is using um, psychological assessments and consideration of psychological treatment and counseling.
You know what? Yes, it's funny you mention that because in British Columbia, the U.S. Immigration Panel physician, his name is Dr. Gurozar Chima. His office is 2 units down from mine, literally right now, and he's the only one here in BC that can administer those exams.
Sure.
So when some of these people who admit to drug usage or have sex crimes, uh, CBP will write back on an RFE and tell that person, you must see Dr. Chima if they're here in BC. You must see Dr. Chima. And he has his
Yep.
own assessment that he does and his own reports that he writes up. So, I keep telling a lot of people here, it's not just filling out a form, it's a lot to these moving parts. But if he makes a determination that the person is still a drug abuser or addict, that's not going to go well for them.
That assessment is it's considered a negative factor in determining risk of harm if admitted.
Okay.
So, like you said, when there's a request for evidence, additional evidence beyond which has been initially submitted, the decision maker will delay a decision until that extra evidence is received.
that makes sense. And we're going to that right now with a gentleman. His is being delayed for that very reason you just said,
Sure.
um, because of his history. So yeah, that's perfect. So
I'd have to say, the ARO decision maker is going to have a certain number of cases that are pending, and
okay,
I know from experience, the director of the ARO doesn't get a gold star uh, if all these cases keep piling up. Uh, but but the no decision will be made until all of the evidence is received, until results of record checks uh, have been received, and then uh, pending cases aren't to the benefit of the ARO or the ARO director, because all they do is generate inquiries,
okay.
which take time to respond to, and and certainly if the case has been pending for some time, the applicant's wondering what's going on, and a reasonable response uh, should be expected. But all of those things take time, and time spent doing those things, responding to inquiries, mean that there's less time for the decision maker to say yes, no on individual applications.
That's a good point you raised. So even I was unaware of that point. So when these people contact the ARO asking for an update, that could delay their file.
It'll delay processing generally
Yeah.
for everything that's pending at the ARO. A certain
Okay.
amount of resource has to be devoted to responding to those inquiries, and that resource that goes to responding to inquiries means that there's less resource available to actually make decisions.
That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. There's a gentleman whose file, he's not one of our clients, been pending 17 months, and he has an immigration violation, but he doesn't have any criminality, so he says. So he was asking me, I said, well, once you get your decision, if it's negative, let me know and we can probably turn it around. But he's inquired at least 6 times.
And I'm assuming you got a response of some kind each time, even if the response is that it's pending.
That's
But even a simple response like that takes time.
okay. Wow, that makes perfect sense. And one other thing I wanted to ask quickly, you've heard of this e-safe process?
Yes.
People have asked me about that, and what I have said that it seems that for these waiver packets, when you take the paper packet to the port of entry, which is how we do it, the officer there uploads it, it gets into the system. With the e-safe, the client uploads it, or lawyer uploads it, it gets into the system. But I'm thinking that does not really affect processing speed at the ARO per se if you use e-safe or paper. But that's really a big mystery. And do you have any information on that? If this e-safe is actually faster? I don't think it is.
Um, but I eSafe. First of all, eSafe came along long after I retired. But um, the the feedback that I'm getting from people like you and immigration attorneys who are working in the system really like the eSafe process. Let's say there's a request for extra evidence. If that goes out in the eSafe process, as soon as you and your client get that request for evidence, it goes back in through eSafe. You don't have to wait for the mail to go back and forth.
Okay.
Just that mail processing time. I mean, mail between the United States and Canada can take a month sometimes. But if you do it electronically, you press a button and it's there.
So okay, so maybe we can, I guess it cuts down maybe like the mailing time, but they
Sure.
actually in an office time, like the officer working on it. I don't think that
No, as soon as all of the necessary information is available, whether it's on paper or an electronic screen, a decision will be made. It, it, like you said, the the application, the paper application somehow has to be keyed into the system. And I don't know if it's the officers at the port of entry that are doing that now, or if that's a manual process that has to be done at the Admissibility Review Office when the paper I-192 is received. But uh, my impression is that CBP and the ARO are really in favor of the e-safe process because it's much more efficient use of time.
And it's also good, I guess, at tracking applications too.
Oh, sure. You know, even the whole thing of preparing a written notice and getting it mailed out, that takes time. But if it's done electronically, you press a button, it's gone.
Okay, so I guess in that sense, it's a little more efficient.
Yeah,
It's just some of these other places are saying it's miraculously, it's much faster. I said, doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it's definitely cut back on the mailing. I
it,
agree.
it doesn't make any difference in the time it takes to assess the merits of the case. That
Okay.
that part of the process stays the same. And eSafe is, I think eSafe is meant to efficiently get that information to the decision maker, but the actual decision process that takes place. And sometimes uh, the decision maker has to go through his own chain of command to say, what do you think we should do with this? Sometimes they have to go to legal counsel within CBP to get an assessment, a legal assessment to it.
So I guess, and I know you're a very busy man, so I'm definitely not going to take up too much of your time. I guess in closing, is there anything we could tell people in terms of this process to basically just help calm them down and say, look, it takes time. Don't worry, it's going to be worked through, but Rome was not built in a day. And they need to understand that, like I said, Rome was not built in a day because here, at least in British Columbia, they're always in a hurry to get it done fast. But a U.S. entry waiver, I-192 waiver, CBP is doing an assessment of the person, a risk assessment to
That's
see,
right.
and that risk assessment takes time.
Um, you and I discussed previously, but my experience in part of this process for months and a couple of years, I had to sign off on every decision,
Okay.
and 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 so you're talking about over time, you're talking about tens of thousands of decisions making. That meant that person was authorized to travel to the United States, and I can't tell you how many nights I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, of all of those thousands of favorable decisions, which person is going to do something stupid in the United States? And then there will be a public inquiry of who authorized that person to travel to the United States, and it's going to come back to me. But that's the type of process that goes into every one of these decisions. And I'll tell you, if 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 it turns out that people I-192 approved cases, if people getting those kinds of approvals are ultimately found to have been in the United States in some kind of violation of law, whether it's a
Mhm.
further violation of immigration law or criminal law, or being involved in disruptive uh, public events, there would be a really careful reassessment of that whole approval process to see if it's something that should continue.
That's really good to know, and you're 1,000,000% correct because, like I was telling you earlier, even when they come in here to the Surrey office, because we have offices in BC, Alberta, and like in Europe, but
Sure.
even when they come in here, I do my own personal assessment.
Yep.
And I told you, as I was explaining earlier, I had them sign something stating to the fact that they are not going to do anything along the lines of what you just said. And they sign it and initial it. I say, nope, sign right there. And I have their passport. I make sure it's that person. That's my law enforcement background. So I want to
Sure.
make sure I'm covered and make sure that I'm not contributing to anything happening in USA in a negative. Because you remember back in 1999, remember Ahmed Rassam?
Sure.
Yeah, see, a lot of these people they never heard of Ahmed Rassam, but
That was a ferry boat guy, wasn't
yes,
it? Yep. Yep.
that's when I worked for the government. Ahmed Rassam, as you know, he crossed over from I think it was Victoria or one of the ferries over there.
Yep.
He landed in was it Port Angeles,
Yeah. Wherever the ferry crossing
and
comes.
he was headed down to LAX to blow it up for the new millennia.
Yeah.
And his
He had a trunk full of explosive device.
yes,
Yep. Yeah. That was an interesting case because there was actually a pre-examination before he left Canada. That was an immigration inspector, and he sent a message to the customs guy at Port Angeles, electronic message. Look, uh, the immigration inspector didn't have the authority to examine the trunk, but he said when this guy gets there, make sure you look at the trunk. And so when the ferry arrived, customs inspector had this advisory. First thing they did was look in the trunk and look what they found.
yeah,
That's how the process worked at that time.
yeah. So I tell a lot of Canadians here, I said, look, you need to be aware of these officers at these port of entries. They don't know who's pulling up at the booth, whether it's coming off the boat or driving up or even walking up. So they
That's
have
right.
to check each person closely, and that can take time.
Yeah.
And
Uh, let's say people get on an airplane. The way things are with air benefits and everything, 3 days before that airplane lifts off from a foreign port of departure, that manifest is available for review. It's submitted electronically.
yep,
When a car approaches the border, the CBP officer at the border has no idea who's in that car or what's in that car. And so you have to, and you don't get much time to make an initial decision.
yeah, exactly. So it's also like an officer safety thing. So I totally understand it. You understand it, but a lot of the people here don't understand it. They say, "Well, I'm just going down to buy milk and eggs." I said, "That's fine." But I've said to people here, I said, "Who's in that car? Five cars down. Who's driving it? What's his name? What's he going to do?" So I don't know. So exactly, the officer in
Yep.
the booth doesn't know either. So
Who's behind you?
yeah, who's behind you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's exactly right.
And not everyone walking around the streets here is a saint in this country.
Well, I will say, from my experience working at land borders, airports,
Yep.
um, you look at the totality of traffic coming into the United States, and when at the time I retired, there's something like 1 billion people coming into the United States every day, and and our experience was that something like 99.98% of those people were all good, law-abiding people and should be allowed to enter. So then you have to figure out, okay, what's the uh, 1/100th of 1% or 2/100ths of 1% of the totality of traffic that you have to be really careful.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you never know who you're going to get, so they have to check each person, carefully, at least try to.
Unless there's some kind of pre-screening process, and
Oh,
that's really
yes.
difficult. Unless that's really difficult to do on the land border. Um, Maybe who knows? Maybe that's going to change in the future sometime.
Now I'm sure you've heard what's happening in Europe because, like I was telling you earlier, I used to live there for about 4 or 5 years. They're coming out with a program called Athias, October 2026. Athias is like a pre-screening
Okay.
where you got to, give your name, birthday, any immigration history, any criminal history. They want to know. The EU wants to know who's getting on that aircraft before you arrive, in the European Union. And if you fail Athias, you do not board that aircraft.
Yep. Um, the United States um, actually has a similar process, has for some time, uh, called the visa waiver process,
Yep.
where the person does not need a visa to get on a plane, but there's a pre-screening process, and that's an electronic screening process. applications submitted prior, applications submitted prior to even booking the flight, and there has to be an, an approval before the airline can book the passenger on the flight.
Right.
But you don't have to do that when you're driving your car over to the Peace Arch or some other place.
Yeah, I don't see how they could even set that up at the land border. That's really no way.
Well, there are processes called
Oh, well, that, yeah.
trusted traveler programs, but those are voluntary that the applicant can be part of. But it's not mandatory that everybody participate in those trusted traveler programs.
Yeah, good old Nexus.
Yeah.
I had the pay sticker back then. So, and I think no, I didn't lose I almost lost my pay sticker back then.
Well, I have an Nexus card and I've had one for some time. And you're a resident of Canada, so
Yep.
you understand about the PEL card process too, the possession and acquisition
Oh,
license.
well, yes.
I have one of those too, so when I travel to Canada to hunt ducks and geese, and I have my Nexus card, my PEL card, and those are the two things I hand out the window when I drive across the border.
Oh, I didn't know you were a hunter, but nice, nice. Well, I mean, if you ever come out to British Columbia and hunt, please look us up. You got a dedicated contact out here for good.
Well, thank you.
It's definitely my
Like I said,
honor.
I was in Vancouver that one time, and that was for the 2008
Yep.
attorney conference, and it was kind of fun because the hotel that I was staying at, I was on one of the upper floors of the hotel, and you could see the single and twin engine seaplanes taking off from the harbor right in front of the hotel window.
Yeah, you were at the Pan. Well, that was the Pan Pacific, and I, s- you may not be able to see it, but I have a souvenir from then.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, there's ALA 2008 annual conference, Vancouver, BC. I don't know if you can see it,
Yep.
but I kept that from '08 when 'cause I was at that conference. That's why I saw you speaking. I'm going to keep
That,
that pen
that,
for life.
that was, like I said, that's the national attorney conference, and I'm not an attorney,
Yeah.
but I spoke at the attorney conferences pretty regular. And that conference, I spoke at 4 different events in that
Yep.
4 day conference, and I can't tell you the amount of preparation that goes into getting ready for those presentations. One one of one of the conferences we started prepping in January, and the conference I think was in June of that year, and we would have teleconferences about I and the other panelists had teleconferences about every other week, going over different issues, preparing for the conference. So there's a lot of work that goes into um, preparing for those conferences, and I think they're valuable for the attendees.
They are. Um, as you know, I attended law school myself. I only did half of it, so I may go back and finish it, but at this point in my life, I don't really see a need to.
Well, it sounds like you're having fun though.
Oh yeah, I mean, what we do here in BC and in Europe, the EU migration law we discussed earlier, so I'm pretty much set. But I hope to be in your position one day. Yeah, you're in a better position. But like I said, I don't want to. I mean, I can talk all day, and I know you're busy, but it's been my honor having you on board, and we look to have you again in the future.
It's our prep work for this conference was enjoyable, and hopefully the teleconference will have value for you and your clients.
It will, sir. And I guess again, thank you so much. It's my esteemed honor to have you on board. You are legendary, and If you ever need anything from us, feel free to call.
Well, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, sir.
Okay.
Have a nice day.
You too.